Good morning and welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist Facebook Live. As you can see, we are in a different setting today. We are off-site for some meetings, so not by a field. That is where we're at.
Not much green around us now.
No, not green at all. But anyways, we have some really good information for you, so we still wanted to broadcast. And today we're going to be talking about Japanese beetles infestation.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of them and had several reports throughout. I know Iowa for sure, southern and eastern and central. They seem to show up extra early this year because of the being ahead of schedule and in terms of growing degree units and so forth, coming out of the ground and so forth. So, and they have pretty good flight patterns. So, it's something that once they invade, they can take over quickly and do a lot of damage very quickly.
I'll say, so what is the damage? How do they start attack?
Yeah, so they're a chewing insect, without getting too far into the entomology part of it. They're a chewing insect and they like that soft tissue. So they make a pretty pronounced pattern on the leaf, and it's going to look very skeletonalized. We don't have a picture of that, but basically what they do is they chew in between the veins in the leaf. So they prefer that softer tissue, not the veins, and you're going to see just a very holy kind of, Swiss cheese kind of looking leaf. And like I said, if there's several beetles on a plant, they're going to do damage quickly. So really the threshold to remember, and what tends to happen is guys usually overestimate defoliation by looking at a leaf. They may think, oh, this is at least 50% when it's really only maybe 30. So there's a lot of good references online too that you can look at. We don't have a picture here to look at, but make sure that you're taking into consideration the whole plant, but also focus on that new tissue. Remember that plant's growing. Just like if you hit it with a herbicide and damaged it, it's going to grow out of that some. So is the plant keeping up? Is it growing out of it? And what's that new upper canopy tissue looking like? So some numbers to remember. Now that we're pretty much at R1, before R1 it's not quite as big of a deal. Once we get to R1, that beginning flower time period, all the way up to R5, which is basically seed set, until we get to the green bean stage, 15% is the cutoff for economic damage. So it doesn't seem like that much, and it's not, like I said, but you need to take into account the whole field. Walk more than just the edges, see where the populations of them are at. Because like I said, they can move. It's not like a wimpier insect like an aphid or something that's not going to move very quickly. They can cover a lot of ground. So if they're out there in high numbers and you're seeing at least 15% on a good chunk of the field, then it may be time to consider a spray. Okay,
I was just going to say, what's in-season defense that you can do?
Yeah, so the best thing is just an insecticide. Once you get, we're at the point right now where a lot of guys are considering fungicides too. So I would kind of consider both of those as you're thinking through the process. What overall health of the field and stuff, kind of what stage they're at. If you're considering a fungicide application anyway, where we tend to see the best yield increases are using both. And usually we say it the other way when we're considering a fungicide to consider an insecticide depending on your insect pressure. I don't like to recommend prophylactically using fungicides, but we tend to see a synergistic effect between the two. So if you're thinking about it, remember, if you're seeing Japanese beetles out there right now, consider both of them obviously at the same time for a one-pass kind of system. But remember, once we get, there's only one generation per year. So if it seems like the numbers are declining, you don't necessarily want to go out there and spray an insecticide and kill all the beneficial insects you have out there, because that essentially resets everything. You got to remember that. And once you get closer to the green bean stage or the edamame stage, however you want to look at it, the damage isn't quite as critical. It's only about 25%. It kind of goes up, so the plant's a little more immune to it. It can take a little bit more, but we are kind of in that critical time period right now of early flowering to seed set, when you don't want to see quite as much damage on the plant. So just some things to remember, and if you're considering an insecticide application of some kind, then maybe think about the fungicide too, but obviously look for diseases and stuff too. Don't just throw it in there to throw it in there, but this would be a good year given kind of the state of crops throughout the states and so forth, our territory. It would be a good year, to try something like that.
So what about planning for next year? Is there anything that can be played into it, or is it a address as you go?
Nope. Yeah, the Japanese beetles are something that come every year. It's just depending on location and kind of where they overtake certain areas. They can come in high numbers. So it's really just a kind of a matter of where you're at and where they're showing up at. Sometimes they'll attack trees or something else, and not even mess with the fields quite as much. But if they end up in your soybean field and don't want to necessarily leave corn out of this, obviously they can clip corn silks. That's another thing to be watching out for as you're scouting your corn too. A lot of times they don't show up in numbers that we worry about, but once they get to that point, especially in the soybeans, they can't tolerate quite as much during that early reproduction.
Okay, sounds good. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Nope.
Okay.
I think we'll have a good rest of the meetings here. Stay inside in the air conditioning for a few more days, and then avoid some of that humidity out there.
Yeah, all right. Hopefully next week we'll be out in the field.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for tuning in and have a good day.